With Palestinian rockets fired into Israel from Gaza and Israeli airstrikes in response, the death toll continues to climb. With scores injured, at least 53 Palestinian and 6 Israeli deaths have been reported as international concerns about a protracted conflict continue to grow.
The Secretary General is gravely concerned by the serious escalations in the occupied Palestinian territory and Israel, including the latest escalations in Gaza, which add to the heightened tensions and violence in occupied East Jerusalem. He is deeply saddened to learn of the increasingly large numbers of casualties, including children, from Israeli airstrikes in Gaza, and of Israeli fatalities from rockets launched from Gaza.
Rockets have rained down on southern Israel as far north as Tel Aviv, while that country's air force struck at targets in the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip, a densely populated enclave of 2 million people under blockade since 2007. This multi-story residential building collapsing under bombardment.
We are deeply concerned at the escalation of violence in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, and in Israel in the past few days. Palestinian armed groups have launched some 250 rockets towards Israel in the past 24 hours, reportedly injuring at least 17 Israeli citizens. The use of indiscriminate weapons, such as the rockets being fired into Israel, is strictly prohibited under international humanitarian law and must stop immediately.
At the heart of the latest escalation is the threatened eviction of Palestinian families from neighborhoods in East Jerusalem, an area Palestinians seek as the capital of a future independent state, and heavy-handed tactics by security forces in response to protests at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound during the holy month of Ramadan.
The President and his team will continue to pursue the conditions for diplomacy, dialogue and de-escalation and protection of civilians, even as we work together with our friends to deter acts of violence and terrorism. We will also continue to support a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That is the only way to ensure the just and lasting peace that two peoples have struggled to achieve. We believe Palestinians and Israelis deserve equal measures of freedom, security, dignity, and prosperity. And U.S. officials in recent weeks have spoken candidly with Israeli officials about how evictions of Palestinian families who have lived for years, sometimes decades, in their homes, and of demolitions of these homes work against our common interests in achieving a solution to the conflict.
The UN's Human Rights Office calling initial Israeli tactics in response to protests indiscriminate, unwarranted, and disproportionate.
What we're seeing is extremely worrying, and certainly when you see the treatment of some of the protesters, and even people who weren't protesting, people who were simply praying, or people who were having their iftar, who've been subjected to violence or completely unprovoked responses by the security forces.
Backdoor mediation from the UN, Qatar and Egypt hoping to deliver a ceasefire, despite no immediate indication from either side that they are prepared to back down. Sherman Bryceby's SABC News, New York.